Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending our event, Virtual Chat with Recent Alumni. And this is part of our Winter at Westminster weekend, which we hope to see you all at. My name is Brittany. I'm an admissions counselor at Westminster College, and I am also an alumni. I graduated in 2009 with a degree in clinical psychology and a minor in sociology. I'm originally from Moab. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I graduated in 2009. And I'm obviously living in Salt Lake City now. I'm going to introduce you to our panelists. They're all going to say a little something about themselves. So the order we're going to go in is Maggie, Samantha, and Bridger.
Hi, everybody. My name is Maggie. My pronouns are she and they, and I'm originally from Reno, Nevada. I graduated this last spring with a custom major in community health and leadership, and I am currently still living in Sugar House and working for Westminster in the Alumni Relations program. Hi, everybody. I'm Samantha Johnson. I'm originally from Las Vegas, Nevada. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I graduated in 2020 with an art administration degree with an emphasis in fine art. And I'm currently back in Las Vegas, which I love, and I work in marketing for a major construction firm.
Hello, my name's Bridger Layton. I grew up in a little town called Tremont, Utah that's about an hour and a half north of Westminster. I use the he series pronouns, and I graduated from Westminster with a degree in environmental studies on sort of the civics track where people and the environment meet. That was 2018 that I graduated, and shortly after that I got a staff position at Westminster. So I'm also, much like Maggie, living in Sugar House, and I go to Westminster every morning to manage the environmental center on campus.
Great, thank you. So we have a live chat over to the right side of the screen, so please feel free to ask any questions you have. We're going to take about 30 minutes to go over some questions and answers with our alumni panel, and then we'll save the last 15 for the chat questions. So my first question is, why did you end up choosing to attend Westminster College, and what was your major draw to attending?
I always feel like Westminster actually chose me versus the other way around. But my biggest draw was the people. I didn't realize that I could be loved so much by an institution. I never wanted to be a number. I knew I wanted some place that would showcase me as a whole and an individual, and Westminster did that first thing. Handwritten notes and talking and calling, and they personally called me when I was accepted, and that's a sort of communication and bond I really wanted with my institution, and they gave it to me. Not to mention that my major is super unique, and not anywhere I would have had to pull together all kinds of different majors in another institution versus Westminster had it all laid out for me, and I loved it. It was my major from day one. I did it all the way through. I'm not currently doing my major right now, but I have goals and plans to really execute that major later in my life, and Westminster gave me that opportunity, which I love.
That's wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, another question for our panel. Did you know what you wanted to do before attending Westminster, and how and why did you choose your major or your minor?
So I started out thinking that I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I befriended people in my program before I was even a student. I was like in their Facebook group, and I had a bunch of their numbers, and I had a 10-year plan. It was all figured out. And lots of people will tell you that when you're 18, you don't actually have it all figured out. And turns out they were all right. And I took an elective class in public health just on a whim. I needed to fill up something in my schedule, and I wanted a break from my major classes, and I totally fell in love. By the first day I went home, I called my mom and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it threw my whole plan out the window. But luckily, I had the opportunity to design my own major at Westminster. We have an incredible customized major program, and I was able to combine theater and communication and public health all into my community health and leadership program, which takes a holistic approach to community advocacy and community work. And I feel so immensely grateful for my ability to do that, to work with different faculty members across disciplines. And I had, I think, a really unique educational experience. And I'm really happy that it ended up that way.
So I really wanted to be an artist for a long time. I have a lot of art in my house. I think that I've achieved that small goal, that I do consider myself an artist. But I realized early on that I didn't want that starving artist role. It just wasn't my path. And so I really wanted something that took art but made it really practical. I still have that rational side, even though I'm very creative. And I realized that what would make me really happy would be to own my own gallery. And so the art administration program is built in such a way that gives me that communication and that business background but letting me emphasize in something that's really important to me. And I was hooked. I learned not only how to write and to speak properly, but how to work in a rational and very business oriented setting. And then really formulating myself as an artist. I didn't know that I could do a lot of different things, and Westminster showed me so many different paths and opened that up. And I hope one day I really can achieve that goal of owning my own gallery, and it's still something that I achieve today.
Thank you both. All right, my next question is, how would you describe the culture in your unique experiences at Westminster College? Do you think there's something for everyone here?
Well, I think the culture at Westminster is really beautiful. Sam said something earlier. I don't think I chose Westminster. Westminster chose me. And I feel like that's something that a lot of our community can relate to, because the culture and the people are so warm, and they're so fun. And in the best way possible, we have so many nerds on campus. And I love nerds. I'm a huge nerd. It's about being passionate about something and about being interested in learning, and also wanting to go hiking on the weekends or wanting to take advantage of being in an urban area. And at the end of the day, there's like this bigger purpose for most people and big dreams and big goals. And there are so many different ways that people can do that, but everybody's sort of on the same page of wanting to do something more and to lead a fulfilling life, and not just to like get a degree and work a job. And I think that that culture appeals to everyone.
That's great. Thank you. I completely agree. All right, my next question is, what on and off-campus jobs or internships did you have, and how did they prepare you for the professional world?
Yeah, I really dove into the on-campus employment game while I was at Westminster. I worked in 3 different programs throughout my time. The first was the outdoor program, which is awesome. They do a whole bunch of education around essentially how to go outside and not only have fun, but also sort of all the skills to stay safe, and all sorts of activities, everything from pack rafting to backcountry skiing to backpacking to car camping, lots of ways to go outside. And I think Utah is the perfect place to go do those activities. But working for the outdoor program, I got to be a student trip leader, and our program is pretty unique in that the trips are fully student run. And so when you get in the vans and drive away with a group of people, there is no professional staff in that vehicle. And so it was a really cool opportunity to really sort of develop as a leader and take a lot of agency. And I think that the skills that I learned there about sort of facilitating groups, presenting to people, as well as coordination and logistics, and then just taking responsibility, all of those things are a thread that follow through to today. And then the second place that I worked on campus was the Great Salt Lake Institute, which does a whole bunch of really cool research on the Great Salt Lake, which is the large saline lake that is near Westminster. And it gets some bad press because it smells a little bad out there, but it's a really beautiful lake, and a place that's really, really fascinating once you get to know about it. And so while I was working for them, what I got to do is coordinate basically curriculum that was then distributed to local to local teachers for, like grade school teachers. And so I put together this whole resource of ways that teachers could take what we know at Westminster about the Great Salt Lake and apply it in a way that met their standards in the classroom. And so that was a really cool way to sort of interact with the community, tap in and learn about our local landscape, and also develop my skills as an educator. And then the last place I worked is the place that I still work, and that's the Environmental Center on campus. And so I worked in the center as a sustainability fellow, which is a really cool program where a team of students gets together, and at the start of the year, essentially your mandate is just that you're going to do 1 or 2 projects that are going to make campus more sustainable. And what those projects are depends entirely on what the students are interested in, what skills they bring to the table. And so, my group was really interested in sustainable food. And so we did a lot of work around sort of thinking through, like, what does it mean to eat in a way that's ecologically thoughtful? How do we break down barriers of inclusivity or barriers of exclusivity to eating sustainably? And we did a whole bunch of interesting outreach around that. And then you can sort of see this thread starting to flow from, developing leadership skills with the outdoor program, and then skills in education with the Great Salt Lake Institute, and then tapping into environmental work in the Environmental Center. All of those things set me up really well for my current position, where I'm, very much an educator and a mentor is most of what I do all day. And so I get to work with students and help make their ideas about, how to make the world just a little bit better and a little more sustainable, how to make those ideas a reality. And I think those things are still on my resume. I'm not so old that they've come off, right? And so I think work experience that you can gain on campus has a lot of value that will carry on for many, many years.
Gosh, I loved working on campus. If you get an opportunity to work on campus, I highly recommend it. It is not only really fulfilling, but incredibly fun. I worked in a couple different places on campus. I worked in the testing center, helping students do different tests. But my favorite job on campus was by far working with the admissions department. They allowed me to be a tour guide and an intern for them, which not only gave me a lot of confidence and a lot of drive and a multitude of other things, but also my 2 best friends who I still talk to this day. And that's something you can never get with other things. So I highly recommend working on campus. Super fun. You also get paid, which is kind of nice too. And then I also had a wonderful internship, and I didn't see this coming in my career at all, but I ended up working with the Make-A-Wish Foundation for my internship in my senior year. And that was an eye-opening experience. I had never worked with a nonprofit before, and I didn't really understand what that meant long-term, but as somebody who wants to own their own gallery one day, that could be my path if I wanted it to be. So it was nice to see that different aspect of it. And there's no greater joy than like handing kids candy on Halloween and seeing their sweet faces and being a part of their lives when it's pretty difficult for lots of these families to go through, and you kind of make their lives a little bit brighter. And I think that you can take that anywhere, spreading kindness and all kinds of realms. So not only did I get confidence and fun times, but I also got some kindness involved.
That's great, thank you. All right, my next question is, what extracurricular activities did you participate in, and were any of them unique to Westminster's location? And then how did these prepare you for the professional world?
Well, I could consider myself a queen of extracurriculars. I feel like I did a lot of things in a lot of different places all 4 years at my time attending Westminster. But I feel like probably the most interesting that I was in student government for the last 2 years. I was student body vice president and then student body president my last year. And that experience of being in student government was like far and beyond the most challenging and fulfilling experience I've ever had. part of that experience is you get a team of student affairs advisors. So in addition to faculty advisors, you get the dean of students and assistant dean, and they are some of the most passionate and intelligent people on campus, and I feel so lucky to have had them as mentors for my last 2 years. And they continued to push me to be better and to do better. And I had the opportunity to work with different groups across campus. I got to work with Bridger on some environmental stuff, and I got to work on food access for students and promote various different projects and health and wellness things. And I really got a sense of what it means to lead a community and to work with different community partners and to understand the different stakeholders in any situation, representing a student body of 2,000 people, but also getting all this information from the administration and like, how do you communicate when you're in situations like that? And I feel like it really prepared me to be a leader in a way that probably nothing else can. And again, I think part of why that's unique to Westminster is it's a smaller school. So it's not, I have friends who did student government at like massive universities, and it's totally like preparing you to be a politician. You run a super intense campaign, and you have a primary and a general, and you like sign executive orders. And this is really just a group of like 8 passionate individuals who get together to see what they can do to advocate for the student body. And I think that kind of experience is so much more beneficial and so much more powerful than something you would get at a large university.
That's great, thank you. Okay, my next question is, what role has a Westminster network played during your job search and your career?
So this question, I feel, is way more of a shout out to our professors who are wonderful and dedicate a lot of time to us as students. And they may not have been directly involved in getting the job that I have now, but they for sure set me up for success. Interview practice after interview practice after interview practice, constant going through my resumes and making it as best I can. I ended up like making myself a logo and learning how to brand myself as a person. And I think those skills and those attributes are what got me my job today, especially in marketing, where it's a very visual job and they want to know that I can do the technical skills that they want. And Westminster's professors were really able to dig deep and figure out where my flaws were and to accent them, but then to make them better and worth it. They even design our programs that way, which is fascinating. They're less of about, let's just teach you the classes, you pass the classes and you leave. They're very much like, why are we doing these things? And then at the end, we're going to show you why we're doing them. And we're going to give you all of this stuff for you to go out into the world and you're going to do it. And that's exactly what happened. I didn't really see where the process was going in the middle, but at the end, I was like, oh, awesome. I actually have a resume. I have a cover letter. I've done like 6 interviews. I know how to talk about myself in an engaging manner and I can hold myself professionally. And I think when you go to a big institution like that, you won't give that one-on-one attention. So I think Westminster is really unique in giving us that, especially by putting it within each program.
Thank you. All right, so we all know Westminster is in a prime location and it's a beautiful area. So my next question is, how did Westminster's prime location shape your experience on your academics?
So I actually grew up in Utah, and so I was learning throughout my youth how prime the location was, and was unwilling to go very far because of it. So if you look at where Salt Lake City is on a map, it's sort of right dead center in the west. And so for me, what that means is that you have access to this huge diversity of landscapes, which I think is really exciting, right? You can spend time in the mountains. You're just a few hours away from Red Rock Deserts, and then obviously there's some obvious things, right? The skiing is good, the biking is good, the outdoor recreation is great, but I also think that the West is a really interesting landscape. And this dips into sort of how the location affected my academics. And the main component there is that I went on a trip called the Westminster Expedition that is scheduled to happen every 3 years. The idea being that no one just by virtue of their timing gets excluded from it. And so I went on this trip as a senior at Westminster, and essentially it's a semester-long road trip. And so the one that I went on was 14 students, 2 faculty, and a program assistant. And we spent about 5 out of every 7 nights sleeping outside in tents and traveling the West. And so the road trip route started in Salt Lake City and took a big loop up north, almost to Canada, peaking out at Glacier National Park, and then heading over to the Olympic Peninsula and sort of working our way down through Oregon. And then came back, had a spring break, and took a second loop south all the way down into New Mexico. And the trip really defined my Westminster experience, because I think the thing that made Westminster really unique for me was that so much of the learning that I did didn't take place in a classroom. Sometimes I was in class, but I did so much that was field-based, and that I think was really exciting, and so to be a senior on this road trip, and instead of reading about how wolves are managed in Yellowstone, we talked to a couple of wolf biologists and saw some from not very far away through binoculars, and instead of just reading about what happened at the Malheur Wildlife Refuge. It's an interesting story to look up if you don't know it. We went to Oregon and we talked to people who were directly involved. And so particularly in the environmental world, I think it's really cool to be able to see sort of firsthand a whole bunch of different perspectives from all these people who are doing work in real time to try and make their home communities and their home landscapes a better place to be. And it was also really great for me as a student to be, instead of just connecting with professors, I was connecting with tons of people working in the field that I was looking to go into. And so it was an amazing opportunity to see all of the various ways that I could sort of take, all the various paths that I could take and all the various ways that I could make the world a better place. And I ended up back at Westminster because it's also a great place to make the world better. But yeah, I think learning outside the classroom was a theme, and an important one shaped by Westminster's location.
I think my answer is on a very similar and also a different vein. I appreciate the outdoors, but am maybe more hesitant to participate in them. And Salt Lake City is a capital city, and it's also an urban area. And I think that combination really makes for some excellent opportunities. I had the opportunity to work on a mayoral campaign and working on a mayor's campaign in a major urban city is nothing at all compared to what I was used to, and it was the coolest experience. I still talk to all the people from that campaign on a regular basis. I had so much fun and learned a lot, and we lost really bad. But I also had the opportunity to intern with the Utah Democratic Party and understand more about the legislative session. I had the opportunity to do some lobbying with different nonprofit groups that I was a part of. And so I went up to the Capitol because it was just a quick 10-minute drive for a couple different causes that I care about. And so I think that was really amazing. There was a United Nations conference that was held in Salt Lake City, and I was able to go to that because it's just right down the street, and we have a lot of amazing arts access and cultural events, but also you have access to the outdoors at the same time, and often feels like you have to pick and choose. And so I can go up to the Capitol and lobby during the day and then go hiking at sunset, and I think that that is just like a beautiful combination. And I'm not from an urban area, I'm from the hardcore suburbs, so it was I just think Salt Lake City is like the perfect size, like my perfect city. And it's really easy to get involved in a lot of things happening in the city because it's growing. So I'm currently volunteering as a trustee on the Sugar House Community Council. I guess I'm not a volunteer, I was elected, I guess. But it's weird because of COVID. Anyways, so I'm on the community council, and I want to run for city council one day, and I'm really invested in the city politics, and it's just really cool to be a part of that in an urban area. And it's actually not like, none of the people involved in city politics are like political science people. It's all, there's a bunch of environmentalists and a bunch of artists, and it's this really fun conglomeration of people's different interests, which is very reflective, I think, of Westminster. And I think Westminster is like the perfect little like lead in into a city government, which is a really nerdy answer, but like I said, we're full of nerds, so yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, panelists, I have one more question for you, and then it looks like there's 3 that are in the chat. So my last question is, what advice would you give to incoming students on deciding a college?
I think that the thing that I would say is going to be no surprise based on what I've said thus far in this call, but I think that look at what is on offer outside of the classroom, right? I think that there are great classroom experiences a lot of places, and that Westminster is no exception to that. I don't think that everywhere offers the same opportunities to get engaged on campus, in your community, and to do field-based learning. And so I think that those components, as I mentioned earlier, are really what defined my experience at Westminster and where so much of the valuable learning and growing took place. And so I would say don't discount those things as you're looking, to think about it as a holistic experience, right? The college it's not just the next school that you go to, it's the next chapter of your life. And so as you try and build that, definitely look at all the components both in and out of the classroom. And I think that'll treat you well.
The advice that I would give would probably be to trust yourselves. It's probably a really confusing and overwhelming time right now. How do I pick a college? How do I pick all of these things? It can be really overwhelming. And I remember this moment with my mom. I was on campus. I didn't do an organized tour, long story, but I was on campus and I looked towards her and I told her, I was like, this is my place. I just feel it. It's here. This is my place. She's like, okay. And of course, there was lots of other trials and tribulations with that. And I applied to other schools, but there was always this pull to Westminster. And I always equate that to just my gut telling me what to do. And so I usually tell all of my students on tour, trust yourself. Just because you're going through a really difficult and challenging time right now doesn't mean you've lost yourself. So really trust what your gut is telling you and make the best decision for you. And I think you'll be happy either way.
Oops. Sorry, Bridget, did you have something?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to give a quick shout out to in-state students as well. I know that sometimes when you're going to college, there's this draw to like go far away and sort of fully redefine who you are. And I would just say that if you're someone who lives in Utah, that Westminster still allows you to do that. It was nice for me to stay close to family, and that felt right, but I still got to meet people from all over the country. And so I think I got sort of an out-of-state experience despite only traveling an hour and a half. And I think that if you're someone who's in Utah, that's something worth thinking about. I think it is, it's pretty unique in that sense. Sorry, Maggie.
Okay. I was going to say, based on my 4 years in Utah, that Salt Lake City and Westminster feels like, I'm sure, a different planet from the rest of Utah. So I could totally see going in state and still having that experience. My advice, it might be a little too targeting my younger self, but you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to pick, there isn't going to be like one option with absolutely everything you want to a T. And Sam's right, it really just sort of is about gut and feel. And at the end of the day, like, you're going to get a degree, you're going to get a piece of paper from wherever you go, but like, where do you want to spend 4 years? Like, who do you want to build connections with? What things do you want to explore? Like, who do you want to be? Like, you don't know who you want to be, but where do you want to go to figure that out? I feel like I started college very confident in what I thought I knew and who I thought I was. And at the end of it, I have more questions than answers, and I have absolutely no idea who I am. But I think that that is a good thing. Like Westminster really opened me up and challenged me, and I got to have so many different experiences. And the community at the end of the day is going to be the most important. Like, if you want to sit in a 400-person lecture hall, you can do that. Or if you want to be in a 12-person Socratic seminar where you're really delving into a topic that might be slightly off from what you plan to talk about that day, but you really get to engage in your learning. Like, the people at Westminster, I want to engage my learning with. I want to engage in conversations with. Shout out to the Honors College for the Socratic seminar style thing, because it was really amazing. And yeah, like, it's not going to be perfect, but where do you want to be for the next 4 years? That is really going to help shape you into who you're going to become, which I know is like really cheesy, but it's totally true. College shapes a lot, and do all of the extracurriculars, because life's too short just to go to class.
Thank you all. And I just want to add to what Bridger said. We are a private college, and so about 50%, right around half, close to half of our students are from out of state, because we have the same tuition for in-state and out-of-state students. So even if you do decide to stay in Utah, you are going to get that diversity and get to know people from everywhere. Okay, we have 3 questions in the chat. Let's get to those. It says, what resources do you recommend for incoming students to get involved in or reach out to?
Well, I can take this real fast just to do a plug for what is colloquially known on campus as the Center for Centers, which is where Bridger works, the Environmental Center, the Diversity and Inclusion Center, and the Dumke Center for Civic Engagement. That's where I got a lot of my start, right when I was like switching my major and having an existential crisis about who I was. And there are so many great ways to be involved. And the community in there is just amazing. The staff members who run all those programs, just like Bridger, are really awesome. And that's a great way to just, if you're like, hi, I'm new, I need somewhere to go and something to do. And they'll just be like, heck yeah, here's some food, here's some tea, what do you want to do? So that's a great place to go.
I'll tag into that. Thanks, Maggie. You're too kind. Yeah, I think that for me, all of those programs that I was involved in, I would happily put a plug in for, right? I think the outdoor program, the Great Salt Lake Institute, the Environmental Center, and the Dumke Center, Student Diversity and Inclusion Center, all of those places, they allow you to sort of, choose one of those spaces based on your interests and what you want to achieve. But I think the thread that runs through all of them is community, right? And there is a lot of overlap between them. There's a lot of cross-pollination. People meet one another. Often we're sharing a space with those other centers. And so I think it's a great place to meet new people and tap into community. And then it also, is a great place to go find support. I think, some of the people that I worked with in the centers as a student are still continued mentors, right? And I think some of the students that I work with right now, hopefully I'll still be in touch with many years from now as well. And so it is, even though a lot of the ways to get involved are like quote unquote jobs, and you're going to work hard, right? But that there's an element of support and an element of care that is very different than if you were to just go, get a job for a paycheck somewhere else. And so I think they're an exciting place. I'm glad that Maggie thinks so too. And yeah, hope to see y'all there.
Great, thank you. The next question is my favorite question. I love when students ask this because this was one of my favorite experiences at Westminster College. Can you tell us more about your experience in the residence halls or the dorms?
Oh, I can take this one. I loved living on campus. I loved everything apparently, but I loved living on campus. I lived in both styles. I did traditional style, which is 2, and I did apartment style, which is 6, which is an interesting learning experience on both realms. But one, it teaches you how to live on your own for the first time. Lots of students who come to college don't know what that's like. Obviously, we're all usually 17 or 18. And lots of people learn how to do laundry for the first time, so that's always fun too. But I love it the most because I met my best friends there, and I got to make really awesome experiences. My first year roommate, Francesca Scapello, she was an international student from Italy, and she was wonderful. She loved to clean. I have a fun vacuum story that I tell on tour all the time, but she was a doll to live with. And we lived together both years, and she also let me live with her in Italy for 6 weeks. So that was an awesome transition to do that as well. And I would have never met her without Westminster, which is cool. And then apartment style is really fun. It's definitely different, and lots of students have to get warmed up to it, which is fair, but it teaches you a lot of lessons about yourself and how you are with other people and how you are on your own. But I think it does really shape you for the real world and giving you those aspects of yourself, because you're always going to live somewhere after college, and lots of times you're going to have roommates, and having those lessons early on will only help your transitions later. But I highly recommend living on campus. I know we have our 2-year rule on campus as well, and I really stick to that rule, not only because I'm an out-of-stater and I use that as a really big tool for myself, but for anybody. We are such a small community that those who don't live on campus kind of miss out on that community element. So coming on campus and meeting friends and going to different events and learning new things is really important. It's hard to get to study groups when you live 20 minutes away, or it's hard to go to the paint nights that ASW puts on if you live 20 minutes away. So it's really good opportunity. I highly recommend anyone who has the opportunity to live on campus to live on campus.
I just want to add a little bit, building off that same idea. I also absolutely loved living on campus. And actually, I lived Carlson first. Woo! We actually all stayed pretty close. Like the Carlson First girls planned a graduation party that unfortunately we didn't get to have because we graduated in 2020. But we were going to have a party for all the girls on our floor. We all still talk. I currently live in a house with 3 other girls, and we all met living our first year in Carlson. And the girl that lived across the hall from me is my best friend. I annoyed her into being my friend, and she hasn't escaped me yet. So, but I had an absolute blast. And, you know, the things that people might be nervous about living in the dorms, like the communal shower or the loudness of other people, like it is all so worth it. We had shower parties on my floor, so we'd like bring a speaker and we'd all go shower at the same time. It was really fun. But there's like the things that you're worried about, like trust, it'll be okay, and they suck, but like the benefits outweigh the cons, and it's just part of the experience. It's like, oh, we got through dorm living together. It's like you come out stronger because of it. Yeah, learning to live with people though, the second year I did apartments, learning to have roommates is difficult, but a life skill. So do it when you're living on campus and it's easier to get out of a bad situation. So yikes, but.
Thank you. And I just wanted to touch on what Samantha said about the rules. So we do have a 2-year housing requirement. We found with studies that Westminster students have more of a sense of community, and there's a higher graduation rate with students who live on campus. And so we do ask everyone to live on campus for 2 years. All right, panel, this is our last question. Thank you all for the wonderful questions and for attending. It says, can you explain how the small class sizes impacted your learning? And with this, I do want to say the average class size at Westminster is 15 students, and you will never have more than 25 students in your class.
I could definitely talk to that real fast. I love the class sizes. I realized I didn't know I was going to go to a small school until I got there, and I was like, oh, this is definitely my spot. But I tell people I'm way more of a big fish in a little pond kind of person. So I really thrive in these small class sizes. I love the connections we get with our professors. It is unlike any other. I love that I ask like 20 questions at least in each class because I'm just that person, and they answer all of them, and that's something that you can't take away. I love that there's no TAs. My professors read every single one of my essays, gave me every single piece of advice, and I loved that. Testing was very good in that caliber too. There's not this overwhelming feeling of sitting with 400 people that you never met and taking this gigantic test. It's way more about making a lot of different friends and being a really awesome community together. So I highly recommend our small class sizes. They're one of a kind, and I loved it.
That's great. Thank you so much. And the professors they know everyone's first names, and they ask you to call them by their first names. Oh, Bridget, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna also comment on the level of access. I think there's a very specific thing that Westminster students experience that not everyone does, and that is that if you send a message to your professor, they're gonna respond pretty quickly, probably within a day. And if that message was like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, can we meet? They're probably gonna say, yeah, let's go grab a cup of coffee. I think that level of feedback is amazing. And it extends slightly outside of the classroom, because when you're a professor and you have 400 students, no matter how much you care about those students, you can't necessarily give them the amount of attention that they might need in order to, to get through something or figure out what's next. And so it's really, really exciting to be able to have a very direct line of communication, even once you leave the classroom. And that's totally related to the fact that your professor doesn't have to handle, a bill of 400 students times several classes.
I just want to build off that real quick, just a little bit, because the professor thing really is pretty unique. I only looked at small colleges, and my best friends from high school all went off to different small liberal arts colleges, and none of them have the relationship with their professors that I do with my Westminster professors. They got a lot more attention than a large university, but our professors are nerdier than we are, and they all love teaching. They're not just there to do their research and teach on the side. They're there because they're passionate about educating young people. I had a take-home midterm, and a couple of us went to the library to work on it, and we called our professor on his personal cell phone and said, what the heck, this question doesn't make any sense. And he walked us through it on a Saturday afternoon. And that is just not an experience that you're going to have everywhere. And I truly, the relationships with professors is unique, one of a kind, and worth every single penny of Westminster, I think. Sorry, I just love my professors. I had to plug that.
I love my professors too. They are one of a kind.
I completely agree. They're great. All right. Well, I think this shows everyone how great the Westminster community is, and this great group of panelists right here. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to do this for us. And for anyone with questions, please email us. Our email is admission@westminstercollege.edu, or you can call us anytime. We're always happy to take your questions. And thank you so much. Thank you guys for being here, and thank you everyone for watching.